like 4 physical cores, 8 logical cores, and say maybe 16 GB of RAM and all of that, which is going to be faster.
A quad core processor with 16 GB RAM.
Yes, exactly. So, uh, depending on the hardware of the computer, obviously, some huge amount of performance boost we will definitely get. But hardware can only take me up to a certain extent. That is the entire thing of this subject of computer science, by the way. So, as ECE students, we can be very proud of one thing. We can be very proud of one fact that had electronics engineering not existed, and electrical engineering students, you can be even more proud of the fact had electrical engineering not existed, electronics would not have existed, electronics engineering would not have existed, computer science would not have existed. A computer is an electronic device, right? Agree, yes or no? Computer is an electronic device. So if
Yes.
electronics engineering did not exist, then obviously computer engineering would not exist. But the thing is that computer science as a subject, what it does is it pushes the hardware. It pushes the hardware to perform better. So computer science as a whole is more optimization, making the optimum utility of any resource available. So what I was saying is that big O notation, big O notation is sort of a rough estimate. It gives us a sort of understanding of what would be the time taken to compute a particular algorithm. But just because I am getting one particular time calculated, that does not mean that it is going to be that same time in all computers. It's going to be the same time for all the inputs that I provide to my system. So by that, I mean that if I'm making a calculation on, say, even if I'm making, say, three different calculations on the Pentium 1 machine, I'm making three different calculations on the Pentium 1 machine. Time taken to make that simple addition is going to change depending on what value I provide, depending on what is the size of the number that I provide. I provide a two-digit number, so I'm adding two-digit numbers, is going to take a certain amount of time. Or if I'm adding, say, two 10-digit numbers, it's going to take a little bit more amount of time. Slightly more amount of time, but it will definitely take a little bit more amount of time. So, time complexity is guessed through the concept of big O notation. And over here with big O notation, we have one thing, that big O notation is always calculated on the basis of n, on the basis of n, the total number of iterations. If I were to go through a program, something like this one, so we have gone through these sort of programs, right? We went through our basic programs. So with these basic programs, so let me just open up the solution set, solution of one of them. So for example, this one, this program. This program, you will say, you all, so one statement takes, this is a constant. So one statement takes 1 unit of time. So how much time will this program take? How much time will this program take to give me the result? Anyone?
It's a very less time. How much time?
Very less time, yes. So essentially, every declaration statement is going to take 1 unit of time. So the creation of the main function is going to take 1 unit of time. The import of the header file is going to take 1 unit of time. Obviously, the calculation is going to take 1 unit of time. To display the result is going to take 1 unit of time. And finally, to exit from the program is going to take 1 unit of time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to take 6 units of time. So if say one single statement takes 1 nanosecond, then it's going to take 6 nanoseconds to go through the entire thing, and it's going to give me the result. So yeah, very less amount of time, definitely. It's going to take 6 nanoseconds of time. Now, when we calculate these big O notation concepts, we don't really calculate or we don't really consider the six. So, for example, what I'm trying to say is, say, loop statements. So, one single loop present means time. If there is a condition statement put inside of the loop that it's going to exit from the loop at when a certain condition is met, so it is not going through the entire of n numbers, then it takes less than order of n. Okay. So let's say, take another example. Let me take this one. If I take this program, this is for calculation of factorial of a number. This program is to calculate the factorial of a specific number. Right? This is going to run for what is the complexity of this program? Can you tell me what is the time complexity of this program?
O big
What
O
is the time
N,
complexity of this?
big O
Of
N, N.
big O of n? No. Go through it a little bit more. একটু ভালো করে দেখে বলো।
আচ্ছা স্যার, দুটো লুপ n স্কোয়ার হবে।
n স্কোয়ার, এক্স্যাক্টলি। একটা লুপের ভেতরে আর একটা লুপ আছে, n স্কোয়ার। আচ্ছা, what I'm trying to say is, along with n square, I also have some declaration statement, some initialization statements, some printf statements, some exit statements. এগুলো তো টাইম নিচ্ছে। So it is going to take n units of time, or n square units of time for the for loops, but also it takes some amount of time for those declaration statements. But when we calculate it, we are going to say it's going to take order of n square. I'm not going to say it is going to take order of n square plus 10, because in the broad aspect of things, if n is equals to 100, then this is going to take 100 square units of time. If n is equals to 1000, it is going to take 1000 square units of time. So 1000 square units of time, তার সঙ্গে আরো ওই 5টা স্টেটমেন্ট, that extra 5 is really very insignificant compared to 1000 squared, right? Yes or no? So that is an insignificant value, therefore it can be ignored. Do you agree to this? Yes or no?
Yes sir.
Hello. Agreed though. So basically, that is the reason why whenever we compute the order of any sort of an algorithm, we usually always concentrate on which is the statement, or which is the set of statements which is going to take the largest amount of time, and that set of statements more or less determines what is going to be the time complexity or the big O complexity of our program. Okay, it's not that we have to go through each and every individual statement individually. More or less, the loops are the ones which takes the highest amount of time. So usually we consider the complexity of the loops inside our. So nested for loops means square. So what about if I have one for loop and then another for loop? They're not nested for loops, but two separate for loops. What about them? So one for loop running for n units of time, and say another for loop running for say n by 4 units of time. What is going to be the time complexity or big O for my program then? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Write it for you. So I have a main function, and inside that main function, I have one for loop, say for I equals to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, and it is executing some statements. And again, after this for loop ends, sorry, and after this for loop ends, I have another for loop, say for j equals to 0, j less than n by 4, j plus plus. It executes some set of statements, and the program also comes to an end. What is going to be the time complexity of this program? Anyone? Anybody?
0 of n square.
Order
Not
of
n
n
square.
square. Acha. Anyone else? Anyone else? I got one answer as order of n square. Anyone else will say anything? This statement is, this is one for loop which is running for n units of time. এই for loopটা শেষ হয়ে যাওয়ার পর আরেকটা for loop রান হচ্ছে which is running for n by 4 units of time. I'm asking is
Sir,
what
n
is
plus
going to
n
be
by
the
4. N plus n by
n
4.
plus n by 4. Acha. I will definitely say that this second answer is more closer than n square. It's not going to be n square. It is not going to be n square. Why? Because this is not a nested for loop. Another for loop, and this is not going to be n square units of time. Okay. Now you're saying n plus n by 4. Again, what we were discussing till now. So if it runs for n units of time, and vis-a-vis if it runs for n by 4 units of time, in the broad aspect of things, n is the one that we should consider. So n is the one that we are going to consider. N by 4 can be considered more or less insignificant when we go into a large number of iterations. So as long as n is equals to 100, so it is total time is being 125. Okay. So one statement is running 100 times, the other one is running 25 times. What about when n becomes 1000? When n becomes 1000, then it is 1250 number of times. When n becomes 10,000, then it becomes what? 10,000, sorry, 12,500 times. So as n is increasing, the n by 4 value is gradually becoming lesser and lesser and lesser. So from the broad aspect of situations, from a large quantity situation, n by 4 can be considered as a more or less insignificant value. So that is why we will say that if I face a program like this, then this is also order of n. This is also order of n. Okay. Is this clear for all?
স্যার n বাড়লে তো n বাই 4টাও তো বেড়ে যাচ্ছে না, ওটাও তো সিগনিফিকেন্ট হয়ে যাবে।
বাড়ছে, yes, n বাড়লে n by 4 বাড়ছে definitely, but when I am considering order, when I'm considering the big O notation, I will always consider the situation of n. Is always considered in the order of n. So order of n is what we consider. Order of 2n, order of 3n, order of 4n is not considered. Okay. So even if I say this one was also running for n units of time, n by 4 ও না, say this one also was running for n units of time, তাহলে কি হচ্ছে 2000 times it's running, right? So ওটা যদি 1000 হয়, n যদি 1000 হয়, then this is total running 2000 number of times. But n যখন 10,000 হচ্ছে, তখন this is running 20,000 number of times. n যখন 1 lakh হচ্ছে, then this is running 2 lakh number of times. তো 10,000 থেকে 1 lakh এর ভেতরে যে ডিফারেন্সটা, সেই তুলনাতে 10,000 এর জায়গাতে 20,000 is not really having a lot of significance. বুঝতে পারলাম? সেই কারণে
ইয়েস স্যার।
তাতে এনটাকেই কনসিডার করব। ওখানটা করে আমার যদি আর কোনো অ্যাডিশনাল কোনো কনস্ট্যান্ট থেকে থাকে, সেইটা আমার can be considered as insignificant. Order of 2n, order of 4n, order of xn এই ব্যাপারটাকে কনসিডার করার প্রয়োজন হয় না। So if it is order of xn, then basically I can say that it is order of n. As long as it is not becoming order of n log n or order of n square or এই ধরনের কিছু অ্যাডিশন যখন না হচ্ছে, আমি ওটাকে ইগনোর করতে পারি। If it's a constant value, then আমি সেটাকে ইগনোর। আচ্ছা, so this part was the consideration of the how to analyze different sorts of algorithms. And this analysis of different sort of algorithms, we will deal with a little bit more when we deal with some of our sorting and searching algorithms. So before getting into sorting and searching algorithms, we need to be a bit more thorough. We need to go through a little bit more of a recapitulation of arrays. C programming, array declaration can be done in two different ways. Essentially, it can be done in two different ways. Can you guys tell me the two different ways in which we can go for array declaration?
Direct and indirect.
Direct and indirect. Achha. Okay, so what is direct and what is indirect?
So direct means we give the value, means the user puts the value while declaring the array.
Achha. Okay. And indirect?
So in indirect we first declare the size and then we input the value.
Okay. So direct you are saying is int arr1 equals to 1, 2, 3, something like this. This is direct, right? This is what you are saying?
Yes, sir.
Right? একই না?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And indirect means this is what you are saying. আমি একখানা তারপরে আবার একখানা লুপ ডিফাইন করলাম, less than 10 দিয়ে আমি scanf করে arr I স্টোর করছি ভ্যালুগুলো, তাই তো? This is what you are saying as indirect.
Yes, sir.
এটা বলছো তোমরা, তাই তো? This
Yes,
would
sir.
be
Yes.
indirect. Okay. Is there any other methods in which we can deal with arrays apart from these two methods? অ্যারে নিয়ে ডিল করার এই মেথড গুলো ছাড়া আর কোনো মেথড আছে? Anyone? কি হলো? এগুলো ছাড়া কি আর কোনো মেথড আছে?
স্যার আর জানি না।
আচ্ছা, so you guys have not gone through dynamic declaration of arrays? আচ্ছা, tell me one situation. Say say I'm going through say I'm storing the marks of 10 students. I'm storing the marks of 10 students, the marks in data structure only. So in data structure 10 students marks I am storing. সেটার জন্য আমি এখানে অ্যারে ইউজ করব, তাই তো? নাকি না?
ইয়েস স্যার।
আচ্ছা, এবারে আমার নাম্বার অফ স্টুডেন্টস হ্যাজ ইনক্রিজড। আমি 10টা স্টুডেন্টের মার্কস স্টোর করার জন্য আমি এখানে অ্যারে তৈরি করেছি। তার মানে আমার এই প্রসেসটা ইউজ করেছি ইন্ট arr to 10, আমি এখানে সাইজ ডিক্লেয়ার করে দিয়েছি অ্যারের। এবারে আফটার আ কাপল অফ ডেজ টু মোর স্টুডেন্টস হ্যাভ জয়েন্ড ইন টু দ্য কোর্স। তখন আমাকে তার মানে 10টা স্টুডেন্টের জায়গায় 12টা স্টুডেন্ট হয়েছে। তো অ্যারের সাইজ ইনক্রিজ করা বা ডিক্রিজ করা, এটা কি পসিবল?
না স্যার। স্যার প্রথম থেকে ম্যালক করে নিলে
Yes, exactly. So then, not just this direct and indirect, but we also can apply malloc function. We can also apply the concept of malloc function to
Yes.
dynamically change the size of an array. There is also another function which does the same sort of work, similar sort of work, alloc function. So memory allocation, malloc, and continuous allocation, alloc. These are two functions which can dynamically increase or decrease the size of a. This is dynamically declaring the size of an array, and then to change the size of the array, what is the function? What is the name of the function?
realloc.
Alloc. Yes.
But sir, in
So,
array, realloc does not work properly because sir,
in
এমন
array,
তো realloc might not work all the time.
আমি শুনতে পাচ্ছি না কথাটা। You are breaking up a little bit.
Sir, in case of arrays, realloc cannot work all the time.
Okay, great. Yes, realloc cannot work all the time. When does it not work?
স্যার অ্যারেতে যেহেতু আমরা কন্টিনিউয়াসলি মেমোরিটা অ্যালোকেট করি পরপর পাশাপাশি, এবার স্যার ধরুন আমি একটা অ্যারে ডিক্লেয়ার করে দিয়েছি, এবার তারপর আমি একটা অন্য ভেরিয়েবল নিয়েছি কিন্তু সেটা কম্পিউটারের মেমোরি ওর পাশে গিয়ে রেখে দিয়েছিল, তো রিয়ালক চাইলেও তার পাশে মানে করতে পারবে না, জায়গা দিতে পারবে না।
Yes, yes, exactly. Absolutely. Very correct. Very correct. So, this dynamic declaration, this dynamic reallocation of size of an array, there is some problem to this process. This dynamically changing or decreasing the size, increasing or decreasing the size of an array. This is possible as long as the memory space is free. If the memory space is free, then I can increase or decrease the size. But if memory space is not free, if some other variable has been somehow stored in the memory right next to the array, then I am not going to be able to increase or decrease the size of the array. So from this, basically, what I want to do is, this I wanted to find out. So basically, you guys have gone through some of these functions, right? You all have gone through alloc and calloc and realloc, all these functions you all have gone through in your first year. I'm guessing from the answers that these things are known to you guys. Yes or no? এগুলো জানা আছে তো? সবার জানা আছে তো? Here go.
Sir, in first year this was not done properly. I learned this from sir on online sources.
Okay, you have learned this on your own online. All right, that's great. That's great that you have taken this interest. I'm very happy that you're taking this interest and you are studying this subject very well. I hope the others will also take up this sort of a challenge, that the others will also follow suit on this sort of a path. That you
Sir,
guys
in
will,
first year, we didn't learn real law.
in first year, you did not learn realloc, but you have
Yes.
gone through malloc and calloc.
Yes, sir.
Have you gone through malloc and calloc?
Yes, sir. Only Malak and Kala, not real law.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we will go through these concepts. We will go through a little recapitulation of arrays. That is the reason why I'm asking these questions actually, so that I can understand how much you guys have covered arrays in your first year. So before getting into arrays, a very basic overview of what are all the different types of data structures available to us that we need to study in this particular subject. So data structures can be very broadly classified into two categories. One is your primitive data structures, and then there are the non-primitive data structures. So primitive data structures are int, char, float, string, these ones. These are not exactly data structures, but these are variables. So you can ask, these are not data structures, these are variables. But what does a variable store? A variable also stores data, right? It is a structured form of storing data. So essentially, int, char, float, these are also data structures. This is one of our students, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. So int, char, float, these are your absolute simple basic data structures. Not really the data structures that we are used to or we wish to study, but yeah, these also store data. So what exactly are non-primitive data structures? Arrays, structures, stacks, queue, linked list, tree, graph, all of these are your non-primitive data structures. Out of that, an array is a data structure which stores completely homogeneous type of data. So if I'm declaring an array, then I must mention what is the data type of that array. If I'm declaring an array of size 10, it is either 10 integers or 10 characters or 10 floating point numbers or say 10 long type numbers or say short type numbers, byte numbers, boolean numbers, characters, strings. So it is fixed. As soon as I'm declaring the array, I am making sure that whatever data I'm going to store in the array, all of them are going to have the same data type. I cannot mix and match different data types into an array. That is possible inside of a structure. So if I have to mix and match data types, then I have to store it inside of a structure, inside of the struct type. Right. So arrays stores homogeneous types of data. Heterogeneous type of data is stored in a structure. So our entire subject of data structures sort of begins with the concept of structures. All the other data structures that we are going to deal with apart from arrays is going to require a good amount of knowledge of the structure and how to utilize a structure. Now, going into a bit more advanced classification of data structures, there are essentially two categories, which are your linear data structures and non-linear data structures. Linear data structures, most basic form is arrays, have disadvantage. Disadvantage that was just discussed. কেন আমরা array কে reallocate করি না? What's your name? কে বললি রে? I am not able to
স্যার
follow
আমি
who is
স্যার মি
me, Ami. Is that your name?
স্যার অর্ঘ্য চ্যাটার্জি
Orgo. Okay. So Orgo said that arrays have the problem that in array data is stored contiguously, side by side by side. So as soon as I'm allocating data space storage of, it is one entire continuous chunk memory space that I must allocate. So there is a lot of disadvantage of this. There's a lot of disadvantage of this. I am allocating say 100 units of space and using only space, and the rest 90 of space is completely wasted. I'm allocating that 100 so that in the future I can store the rest 90. But for the moment, that 90 units of space is completely getting wasted. Or I am saying, nah, I'm going to save the space. Right now, I'm going to only store data in 10 units of space. I'll store only 10 units. But if I want to add a 11th unit or a 12th unit, right next to those 10 units, I must have the memory space available. If I do not have that, then I cannot store the data in arrays. So that is a huge disadvantage, which is why we move on to other types of data structures. So the other type of data structure that we are going to move into next after array is linked list. Linked list has the advantage over in this particular area that array did not have. So linked list solves the problem of arrays. And linked list can be applied in some other forms of data structures as well, which are your stacks and queues. Stacks and queues have got specific conditions attached with them as well. So input and output restrictions are built into when we deal with a stack or a queue. Apart from these linear data structures, we also go into some non-linear data structures like trees and graphs. These are some of the data structures that we are going to be studying in this particular subject. So now a recapitulation of arrays. So as we said, array is a collection of similar type of data items. It must be either an integer type or a character type or a floating point type, one single homogeneous data type. All the data stored in an array has to be of the same data type, and they are stored at contiguous memory locations. Now, dealing with the time complexity of arrays, if I want to access any element, if I want to access any element in an array, 1 unit of time. So order of 1. Access any unit of access any particular element in an array, it's 1 unit of time. To search for the presence of any sort of element in an array, it usually takes either order of n or order of log n if I am applying a binary search algorithm, or it can even take order of n square if I am applying, say, your bubble sort algorithm, sorry, bubble search, sequential search algorithms take order of n, linear search order of n. Was the one that takes n square? We discussed it. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name of it. Selection search, right? Selection search takes order of n square units of time. So, based on the algorithm that I apply, the time complexity is going to change for searching of an element. Acha. What if I want to insert a data inside of an array? And by insertion of data, I mean that I'm not inserting a data at the end of the array. So I'm trying to insert a data somewhere in the middle of the array. Or if I'm say inserting a data at the absolute beginning of the array, I have to shift all the other data by 1 unit of space. Shift all the other data by 1 unit of space. So insertion is going to take In the worst case situation, it's going to take n units of time, because if I'm trying to store data absolutely at the beginning of the array, I have to shift all the n elements of data by 1 units of space. Best possible situation is if I'm inserting data at the absolute end of the array, then it's going to take only 1 unit of time. Similarly, to delete a particular data element, if I'm deleting from the absolute beginning and I have to shift everything back into place, so again, the worst possible situation is n units of time. So why do we use arrays? It makes our life easier. When I'm trying to store data, similar type of data, then instead of using different variables, I can store the entire thing in just one variable name which stores all the 10 different data. So for example, marks of one student in 6 different subjects, instead of storing it in 6 different variables called as, say, marks 1, marks 2, marks 3, marks 4, marks 5, marks 6, I can just store it in one single variable and assign the subscript number. Based on the subscript number, I can automatically understand which particular subject that I'm talking about. So let's see that sort of a program. Over here, I have a program which is trying to calculate the average score gotten by a student in 6 different subjects. And I'm trying to store those marks without using the concept of arrays. So I have to apply 6 different variables. I'm using 6 different variables to store that. That, of course, is it's not really a very intelligent way of approaching the problem. A much more intelligent way, a much more easier way, much more lazy way of approaching the problem would be to store the marks inside of an array. So then the naming becomes much easier. The program becomes more readable. In later stages, it becomes much more readable. So the readability of the problem increases a lot if I'm going with the concept of arrays. Storing the marks achieved by one student in 6 different subjects, it is much better if I store it in an array of size 6. And I'm trying to calculate the average. So this way I can calculate the average. Now, what about how these are stored in the memory space? So when I'm declaring any sort of a variable, whenever I'm declaring a variable, the variable is stored in the memory at some location, is stored in the memory at some particular location. That location must have an address. So, for example, if I'm asking Orgo, where do you reside? Then Orgo has an address, his home address where he stays. Similarly, sort of a variable, when it is stored in the computer space, must have some sort of an address where it is stored. So declaring variables means random addresses can be assigned to those variables. So for example, marks 1, marks 2, marks 3, 4, 5, 6, they are stored at random different memory locations. You can see that those memory locations, the addresses, I have written on top. I have written on top of each of these variables. Okay. So for example, variable 1 is stored at the memory location 1120. The addresses are usually in a sort of a Unicode format or a hexadecimal format in which they are stored in the memory. So it's not really a normal number, that the normal number sequence. It's a slightly different sequence if I want to look at the address. So in fact, pointers store the address, right? It stores the address of any particular variable. So if you try to outright print the value stored in a pointer, if you try to print it in integer form, because whenever you're printing, you have to declare the type, the %d. If you apply to a pointer, you find that the value which comes is not really something that you will be expecting. It's going to be, say, a large number. It's going to be a very large number. It might even be a negative number. And you can get confused. Now, what is this? Because it is stored actually in a different format. I'm converting it into an integer and I am displaying it using the printf command. But when I'm storing different variables, individual variables, these individual variables are stored in a random memory location. So, but when I am storing data in an array, I'm storing data in an array, then data is always stored in contiguous memory locations. So if the starting point of the array is stored at 1120, then the next element will be stored at 1124. Why 1124? Because it is an integer type. The size of one integer is 4 bytes. Right? What is the size of integer? 4 bytes. So one integer value is stored at memory location 1120. The next integral value can be stored 4 bytes after that. So it can be stored at 1124. So these 5 numbers, they must be stored in contiguous memory locations. So if I want to add in a 7th value, the memory location 1144 must be available to me. The memory location 1144 must be available to me. If the memory location 1144 is available to me, I can increase the size of the array. But if the memory location is not available to me because some other variable has been stored over there, then the program is going to give me some sort of a error. The program is going to give me some sort of a error signal. The memory could not be allocated. Okay, clear till now? Any sort of doubts? Anyone having any sorts of doubts in these areas?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, all right, great. So now we said that to access any particular element in an array, it takes 1 unit of time. Access any element in an array, it takes 1 unit of time. So if I want to access the 5th element of the array, it will take 1 unit of time. Because to access the 5th element of this array, to access marks 5, I do not need to travel from marks 0 to marks 5. I do not need to start over here, from here, go here, from here, go here, from here, go here, from here, and here, and here. I don't need to travel through the entire array to arrive at marks 5. I can arrive directly at marks 5 if I know the base address of the array. If I know the base address of the array, I can automatically calculate what is going to be the address of marks 5, and I can directly access the address 5. The formula for that is this. Formula for that is this one. I know the base address, and depending on what is the size of individual elements. So since it is an integer, that means this size is 4. Since it is an integer, this size is 4. So if I want to access a marks 3, that means this one, then I know the base address. Whenever I give the name of an array, the base address of the array is given. Whenever I give the name of any array, the base address of the array is given to the program. And based on that base address, it can automatically calculate using the subscript number. In subscript number, it can automatically calculate which is the value or which is the index of the array that I'm trying to reach to. So from this, I can calculate that this is third index point that I want to reach. I can calculate what will be the address 1132. Directly, I can access the value stored at memory location 1132. So it is going to take 1 single unit of time to arrive at index number 3. So this is one huge advantage of array. Accessing data is very fast in an array. No other data structure that we are going to be dealing with over here, say linked list or stack or queue or tree or graph, none of these can access any particular data within itself in such a fast amount of time. A linked list is going to take order of n to be able to arrive at the nth data, because you must traverse a linked list to arrive at that particular data element. If you are implementing a stack or a queue using array, then you can arrive at that particular data in 1 unit of time, because at the root of it you are applying an array. But again, if you are using array, you are automatically inheriting all the disadvantage of array, which is contiguous memory location. So contiguous memory location has a huge advantage when it comes to accessing speed, but contiguous memory location has a disadvantage when it comes to dynamically increasing or decreasing the size of an array. So now, how much time do we have left? Okay, we have some amount of time. So I want you guys to practice some, I want you all to try your hand at some problems on array. The first 5 problems are going to be pretty easy. They are very easy problems. Question numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are going to be very easy problems. I hope that all of you are going to be able to go through them very easily, very quickly. 6 onwards are some problems which are a bit more standard. And I want all of you to be able to solve these problems. I want everyone to be able to solve these problems. Question 6 to 10, everyone must be able to solve all these problems. Okay, so these 10 problems, please take a screenshot of these. Please take a screenshot of these 10 problems, and I want you guys to try your hand at these 10 problems. I want you to be able to complete these 10 problems.
Can you give these problems in the chat?
Yes, sure, I'll give it in the chat box.
Sir, will you share the PPT?
Yes, what?
Will you share the PPT?
I cannot hear what you're saying, Samvita.
Will you share
Your
the
voice is
PPT?
breaking up. PPT, yes, I told you guys the earlier day that the PPT I keep on changing every single day. Okay, so before taking class with you guys, every day I keep on adding stuff to it. So right now, giving you guys the PPT is not really going to be very helpful. I'll keep on sharing the PPT with you guys from time to time, but right now giving the PPT to you guys is not really going to be very helpful. Okay, so I'll give you guys the PPT, say before our term one. Before term one, I'll give you the PPT till whatever we have covered during that time. So I'll give you the PPT during that time. By that time, at least I will come to some sort of a logical conclusion over there. And chat box has got a limitation on the number. Right. So, please tell me, okay, if any of the questions are getting like part of the text is getting cut out. Okay, so all 10 questions given in the chat box. Please try these 10 questions. First 5 questions are very easy. Really should not face any sort of a trouble with these first 5. 6 onwards, they get a little bit more tricky. and I want everyone to be able to solve these questions. Okay, so I'm here on the chat, here on the meet. If you face any problems, please let me know. I'm just putting myself on mute. Please try your hand at these 10 problems and let me know if there's any sort of an issue. Our class is till when? Of the another time at say 12:20 of the right? Yeah, we have time till 12:20. So we don't have a lot of time then. We have 20 minutes. So in the 20 minutes of time, at least you should be able to solve first 2 or 3 questions. Hoping that you guys can solve at least first 3 questions. Okay, 4 questions. You need to be fast. Please increase your speed. First 4 questions, at least 20 minutes of time. I'm checking in with you all again at 12:10 and hope that by 12:10 you guys can complete till question 4 or question 3.
আউটপুটটা ওটা 11 হবে 12 মাইনাস 1 সবচেয়ে স্মলেস্টটা 1 আছে
আচ্ছা হ্যাঁ ওটা আমার দিস ওয়ার আমি
হ্যাঁ
অন্য
স্যার
কোনো
চারটে
একখানার
হয়েছে
তাহলে এক্সাম্পলটা লিখতে গিয়ে এটা লিখে ফেলেছি অন্য কোনো একখানার এক্সাম্পল লিখতে গিয়ে এটা লিখে
স্যার চারটে হয়ে গেছে
হ্যাঁ স্যার চারটে হয়ে গেছে
শুনতে পাচ্ছি না
হ্যাঁ স্যার ডান
চারটে হয়েছে
চারটে হয়ে
আচ্ছা
গেছে
ওকে anyone has completed any further than that
স্যার 5টা করছি আমি হয়ে যাবে এখন
5 করা হচ্ছে very good I'm very happy that you guys are able to solve in 20 minutes at least 4 questions I'm very happy with that please like when you guys are practicing make sure that you can keep up this speed because finally when you guys will sit for your placements and all during that time not just accuracy but also speed is also a very big factor so definitely try to keep up this speed the questions are going to be obviously a whole lot tougher than these that is true but like if you continuously keep up the practice then I'm sure that each and every single one of you will not face a lot of difficulty अच्छा ठीक है. So these 10 questions also they remain as your assignment. Yes, I still haven't been able to give you guys the Google Classroom link. I will make sure that I do it today. I'll give you the Google Classroom link today and the assignments set over there. So please complete these things. And okay, so I will meet you guys again on Tuesday. Give you the attendance. Okay, so attendance link given. Please give your attendance. And I'll see you all again on Tuesday. And we will continue on with basics of arrays, sorting and searching algorithms, do some practice problems on sorting searching algorithms. Then we'll go